Hello, Yellowjackets Hive. I'm Medium Melanie, along with my co-host.
I'm Emily.
And we have a special guest in the Hive today. We'd like to welcome Mark Lane, the owner of Coed Naked. Hello, Mark.
Hi,
Yes,
how are you both doing? Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. And we should note there is a snowstorm going on the East Coast. So if we lose Mark momentarily, it is due to weather-related conditions, but we will just pick
That's
back
right.
up. So don't stress. Don't stress.
We're used to that too, both of us being from the Northeast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, today's the first day. Hopefully it doesn't impact us, but we had some flickers earlier, so you don't know.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, well, either way, we're prepared, but hopefully that will not happen. Let's dive into Coed Naked and Yellowjackets. So first, Mark, tell us a little bit about the brand Coed Naked. It was an iconic 90s brand. How did you found that brand?
Yeah, so actually I wasn't the founder. So that's the first story. I was a student at the University of New Hampshire back in the mid 80s. And I went home I think it was my sophomore year. I went home for Thanksgiving break. And my brother, who was a year older than I am, was wearing a Coed Naked shirt, a lacrosse shirt. And I thought it was the edgiest, funniest, most interesting shirt that I had ever seen. So as my mother was folding laundry and putting stuff away for us to go back to school, she accidentally put that shirt in my pile, and I accidentally, on purpose, took it to school so that I could, have this shirt, and thinking that I'd be fairly unique. And I was unique wearing that shirt for a little while, but probably, I would say within 6 months, I started seeing other Coed Naked shirts on campus, and it got to the point where I wasn't unique at all. It started popping up everywhere, and I ended up meeting the guy who started it. He wasn't a student at the University of New Hampshire. He was a resident of Durham, but he went to the University of Colorado, and he literally was selling these Coed Naked lacrosse T-shirts, and it had a catchphrase on it that said "Rough, tough, and in the buff." There's the shirt, and and he was essentially selling it for beer money as a freshman at the University of Colorado. He did so well selling that shirt that he quit school, moved back home, and started a business, and that's where I met him. So I met him probably my junior year, my third out of 5 years at UNH.
Okay. Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah. So I mean, to continue to tell you how it all came about, where I ended up owning the company. I was getting my history major and a MBA at the same time, so kind of a dual degree. And I'm watching all my MBA fellow students go out and get these corporate jobs for $40,000 a year, which was a lot of money back in those days. And I ended up taking a $7.50 job with this kid because I was so intrigued by Coed Naked, and I wanted to take what he was doing and spread it across other campuses across the country. And that was just my intrigue with the whole line. And so I did. I started working with them in May of 1990. I ended up, I can tell you the date. It was August 23rd. I went to work, and there were chains on the door. So he had shut the company down because he was getting sued by the Collegiate Licensing Committee because he was putting college names on the shirts without a license.
Wow.
So that opened the door for me to purchase the line, and I did with two other partners. We ended up buying the trademark for Coed Naked and his customer list, and started our own business in October of 1990.
Oh, wow.
That's incredible. And you guys had a really good run. I mean, you gained national honor. You guys had, tons of sales. And we talked a little bit before we started about the peak of Coed Naked. And you said that was like 1995. And you guys had a very special opportunity then. What was that?
Yeah. So in May of 1995, and really that month, in that particular year, it was really the pinnacle of Coed Naked. And it really kind of measured the success we were having as a business, the craziness of it. Really, from my perspective, I was only at that in that year, I was 28 years old or something like that, and I hadn't experienced anything but success with this line, so I hadn't really learned how to run a business. It all came so easy because we had a line that just really sold. Yeah, and in that month of May of '95, we ended up winning Entrepreneur of the Year, not just in New Hampshire and not just regionally, but ultimately nationally. And we ended up celebrating that at a Rose Garden ceremony with President Clinton.
Oh, that's so
That
cool.
was, yeah, that was kind of the pinnacle of Coed Naked. And also in that month, there was a variety of other things that happened. We had moved into our 60,000 square foot facility, which is where I am today. We just sponsored a race car that won the ACT championship and then became a Bush North contender the following year. So, I mean, all these things were great. And it really started just from this incredible expansion of Coed Naked from 1990 to 95, like almost unheard of growth. It was exciting, but just to me, mind blowing too. It was just that much fun.
Especially as a young person. I mean, you're still under 30 years old. You're, building this huge business. And
Yeah.
I mean, it got big, you had said this photo was a display and you guys had display contests amongst various retailers.
Yeah, I mean, so really Coed Naked, we started in October of 1990, and literally by the end of 1990, our accountant said, "Hey, it might be time to shut the door because your sales aren't big enough and you're running out of cash." And we were down to our last $700 essentially, and we took that $700 and we flew to Daytona, Florida. And we decided we were going to drive up and down the coast and knock on every resort door that there was. And by the time we got down to Palm Beach, we had been getting the same message from all of our hopeful customers. And that was the owner or the buyer was in Orlando. So we turned the car around and obviously went to Orlando to find out what was going on there. And what was happening, it was a big trade show. And so we walked into the show and tried to sell Coed Naked as best we could, but it's very difficult when you're not actually showing at the show. So at the end of the day, we were kind of down, to be honest with you, because we literally had $700 that we had just spent to get down there, and with really no luck. And as we were walking out of the trade show, we stopped by one last booth and we were talking to a guy, and he asked us what we were doing, and we showed him our Coed Naked shirts, and he said, "Boy, I've heard of that line." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." He said, "Do you have a rep in Florida?" And we said, we tried to pretend we were cool at that point and said, "Well, we'll have to see, what part of Florida." And but sure enough, we hired him. By the time we got back to New Hampshire, we had orders on our fax machine.
Faxes.
Of course, I don't know what a fax machine is, but it was great. And literally in 1991, we ended up doing $1 million in sales. And to give you an idea of how it exploded, we did $1 million in 91, $2.5 million in 92, $7 million in 93, $23 million in 94. And in 95, we were set to double that. And we had, grown the company to this, with the expectation that we're going to do 50 million. And then, it started to slow down at that point. But to get back to the picture you show, that was a display of one of our retailers. We had over 12,000 retail stores.
Wow.
And we always encouraged them to, display the product as best they could. And it was a display contest that we had run every single month. And this is one of them. But yeah, we had over 12,000 retail stores at that time. And it was,
Wow.
I don't know, it's just fascinating time.
That's
But
exceptional.
that May was the pinnacle. It was because after that, it started to, fall off the cliff a little bit. And that's when we actually had to learn how to run an actual business. So it was challenging.
Absolutely. You know, and you dealt with some external challenges as well. You know, as you were gaining popularity, kids were wearing co-ed naked shirts to school,
Yeah.
and you know, things got a little bit dicey with that, right? Tell us more
Yeah.
about what happened with the schools and co-ed naked.
Yeah. So that's kind of um, it really started in 1993. And when you tell a high school kid what not to wear, of course, they want to do just the opposite. And it really helped explode our business. Um, but by 95, it started to, that message in high schools started to resonate across the country in terms of not allowing Coed Naked shirts to be worn at the school. So the line originally was started at a college campus. It obviously has some risque aspects to it, but it's fun. It's meant to be fun. It's not meant to be, insulting or anything else. It's always been a fun line, and 99 out of 100 people look at it that way. Um, but the problem is when you're in the college market and then the younger brother or sister wants to wear the Coed Naked shirt, it's a little bit young. And so we started having schools challenge us. In fact, one of the schools that did the biggest challenge was out of South Hadley, Massachusetts.
Oh.
There was a kid that wore a Coed Naked shirt to school, was told to turn it inside out. He refused to, so he was suspended. He ended up suing the school. The ACLU represented him. And it was a 3-year case, and he literally won the case at the end of the day. But
Wow.
by that time, the press of that lawsuit was so great that it really made national news. And so high schools across the country started banning Coed Naked shirts, and others as well. But Coed Naked was kind of the headliner of the whole thing.
Slap bracelets, I remember getting banned in schools back then, along with the co-ed nakeds. Yeah, that was a time of bans.
Exactly. They loved to ban things back in those days. But so yeah, it definitely hurt our business in the 90s, in the mid 90s. After that 90, I think what happened is as kids were buying their back to school clothes in that summer of 1995, all of a sudden Coed Naked wasn't on the list. Because they knew it was just going to cause trouble with their children. So it definitely it presented a lot of challenges for us. It was the first time in 5 years of being in business that we actually had to learn how to run the business.
Yeah.
Right. Gosh, for me, it must have been like 1992 or 93. I actually got a Coed Naked softball shirt for my birthday. Had a birthday party with all my teenage friends or whatever, and I got the Coed Naked softball shirt. So my dad sees it, and he's like, "Oh no, you're not going to wear that." So he actually drove me to the mall, made me return the T-shirt. I swapped it out for a Red Sox one. But my dad is not the type of dad to just drive you to the mall, like, ever. This is like, it stands out in my mind as like, he must have felt very strongly about it. And my mom must have been like, well, if you don't want her to have the shirt, you're gonna have to drive her to the mall yourself. So he did. So I never got to own one, but now, here in my adult years, I'm glad that you're back, and I can finally have my dream come true of owning a Coed Naked shirt.
We could certainly get you guys set up with Coed Naked shirts. That I can do.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. And we're excited about our Coed Naked podcasting collaboration we're talking about. So more to come on that. So in the 90s, you guys were on TV. You mentioned that you were on Roseanne and some other shows in the 90s. Things had kind of then died down with the brand, and, Coed Naked started popping up again on television. Shows like Schooled in Portlandia and now Yellowjackets.
Yes.
You brought with you the original Coed Naked soccer T-shirt. Do you want to show us the original?
Yeah, it's right here. This is the original Coed Naked soccer as it looked in 1990 or 91. So
get your kicks on the grass.
Yeah.
That looks different than the one that was on the show. Yeah.
Well, over the years, we would do different renditions of the shirts, So when we started in 1990, there were very simple graphics, very low color, always on a white T-shirt, and and then as we got more sophisticated and we were able to create a little more sophisticated artwork, we always changed it up, from year to year. So you wouldn't be buying the same Coed Naked soccer shirt the next year. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
but so the one you're showing on the screen right now was a rendition, probably around if I had to guess, around 1993. Of course, that design would have been on the back, because all our shirts were, the print was on the back, and then we have always a little front logo as well on the front.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's probably like a 1993 version that they had, if I had to guess.
All right. So we actually had a chance to talk to Marie Schley, who's the costume designer for Yellowjackets, and I'm just going to play a couple of the costume audition videos that she had shared with us, with one of the extras wearing the shirt. So let's just take a quick look at
Rolling.
those.
Action. And action. And action.
Mhm.
Rolling.
And then
Rolling.
That's so crazy how they make it look like that.
Yeah, that's
the
pretty.
aging, right? She had said their aging team in Canada had actually been nominated for some awards, for that. It's pretty incredible how it ended up on the show, the evolution of it throughout the show. And let's show a clip with Marie kind of talking about how Coed Naked ended up on Yellowjackets. So there were a lot of notable 90s looks in the show, Coed Naked, being one of those. Tell us a little bit about how it ended up in the show. Was it like a no-brainer from the beginning, or, how did that evolve, and how did it actually make it on Van?
Well, the fun thing about that shirt is that Ashley and Bart wrote that in. So
Oh, really?
being 90s kids and myself being a 90, that was one of the first things I read in the script. And to me, it was something that really sparked my imagination, because that was such a iconic thing from the 90s. And you had a Coed Naked everything, In fact, when I was posting about this Instagram, on a friend of mine from sports in the 90s wrote rough, tough, and in the buff. And I was like, I forgot that there was that other like quote to it. So, but it was really fun. So it really nailed it down in that time period. And they are amazing about those kind of details. They're incredible writers. And so when I was given the script to like interview for the show, and that came up, that really sparked the idea of using clothes in the wilderness that were out of their closets, out of their suitcases, and mixed up and worn down and everything, because it was that idea of juxtaposing the teenage girl with this like wilderness life that they're leading in survivalism. So it was really fun to mix those two things up together.
Yeah, she did nail it. It was definitely an iconic shirt of the 90s. And, back in those days, we got a lot of media attention, and there was a number of shows that would call up and ask if they could use the shirt in their script, or somewhere in a sitcom or movie or something like that. I think back in the day, probably the most prominent one was Roseanne. But as you mentioned, Melanie, they started popping up more recently, because we had, after the decline of Coed Naked in the late 90s, we had put it on the shelf officially in 2006. But really, for all practical purposes, is probably on the shelves as of 2002, something like that. But we started seeing it pop up in television shows again, mostly shows that had kind of a 90s kick to it, like Schooled and Portlandia, which was really cool for us to see. But it wasn't the spark that we needed to re-release Coed Naked to today's college age, students. And, I had been waiting since probably the early 2000s to find the right reason to bring it back. And there was really two things that actually three things that happened that really forced the issue. And the first one was it being on Yellowjackets. And Yellowjackets, as opposed to, you know, School in Portlandia, nothing against those two shows, because I'm sure they're perfectly good shows, but the amount of attention that Yellowjackets was getting was so significant, and the you know, the success of the show really was pretty intense and incredible. And I think that's what really started me thinking about, hey, we really should relaunch this. If it's good enough for Yellowjackets, it's at the time is right. But there were two other small, not small factors, but one small one is we used to get all this fan mail too back in the day. I mean, literally, it just came in between 91 and 96 or something like that. I haven't gotten a piece of fan mail since, but all of a sudden I get this piece of fan mail, and I'm like, okay, so Yellowjackets and fan mail. That's interesting. That's a good combination. And then what happened was this kid from UNH who started a line while he was at school that I helped him with, called Coastal Kooks. And he created this real success story at UNH with his brand. And one day he was in the office and we were walking around, and he saw all this old history of Coed Naked on the wall and said, boy, I love that line. I want to relaunch that. I was like, okay. So now you've got a kid from UNH, which is, you know, mirrored kind of my history, this fan mail. And then of course, Yellowjackets was just the, you know, the perfect show for it to be on, to, you know, really push me over the edge to relaunch it this past summer.
Who cued you into it being on Yellowjackets?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, so we have this one of my employees who happens to be a huge fan of Yellowjackets.
Buzz.
Yeah, so she so I didn't realize, you know, I heard a lot about the hype of Yellowjackets and the show, and that it was you know, this new popular great show on
Showtime.
Yeah. But you know, she came to me and was all excited one day because she saw this shirt. I want to say, wasn't there a scene? I don't know if the girl was hanging from a tree or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. She took a snapshot of that and sent it to me and says, "You're not going to believe what I just saw in Yellowjackets." Well, this woman loves Yellowjackets. She's obsessed. She's watched and taped every single episode. She intends to rewatch them before the season 2 opening in March.
She'll have to also catch our season 1 recap episode ahead of season 2.
Oh yes, well, I will tell her that, because that's the reason she's watching all of them again, is just to reacquaint herself with everything that goes on. So yeah, she clued me in, and obviously I was thrilled about the fact that they included Coed Naked in the show. So
absolutely. You know what? Let's watch one more clip with Marie talking about Coed Naked and Yellowjackets.
Naked soccer t-shirt person who, when we were making the pilot, the wardrobe department called it the hunter, because we didn't know who it was, and we didn't, and the whole idea was not to
reveal who it was.
So we had, and that's part of how that whole costume evolved into the look. This picture you're showing right now is like, we did a lot of like test run with a stunt. This is one of the stunt people who actually wore the costume. We tested out what looked best. You can see that this shirt's not aged at all. None of this stuff is like aged down or made to look old yet. It's still just like right.
And then you aged it and made it look old.
Yeah.
That's so much fun. I love the process of how, you know, they age that. We have another clip on that we'll show in a minute, but you need to watch Yellowjackets, Mark. You know, I'm going to out you as someone who's not watched it yet. You need to watch this show.
Well, I'll tell you what, for someone who's not watched the show, I've done more research on this show. I've watched YouTube videos about it. I've had sit downs with my employee who's caught me up with about every detail. And I am going to watch the show. I'm going to subscribe to Showtime, and I'm going to watch it because it sounds like I'm missing something incredibly important, and obviously something that is huge with the fans out there. So I intend to watch it
For sure.
Absolutely. And like we were talking about with Marie, there were a lot of 90s looks, including Coed Naked in the show, including some pink Converse that were in a scene with Coed Naked. So let's just take a quick look at that clip as well. The pink Converse is another kind of like 90s item. Was that something that was written in? Was it a detail added later? Tell us about the pink Converse.
The way that was written in was it just talked about a shot in the script where you pan up and you see the shoes come to the edge of the pit where the girls murdered. And one thing that was really important was to create costumes, like I was saying before, that look like a teenage girl. Like, we don't want it to just look like a tribal community or some fantasy. Like, really needs to be that these are teenage girls. And so a pink Converse coming to the edge of that really spoke to that. It, like, again, with like the juxtaposition of those furs that have all been like hand sewn together. And so that was the first clue. It's kind of like Coed Naked t-shirt in that sense.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I the 90s are coming back. And
Oh yeah.
you see a lot of that stuff, whether it's the pink Converse or, different looks in apparel. It's all coming back. Records are back, right? Vinyl.
Yes. Yeah. The younger people are loving them.
Exactly. My youngest daughter got a record player for her last birthday, which, it's just, to me, it's mind boggling that, things that people, the kids today, with all the technology that's out there, would be interested in vinyl records. But it's cool, and things that were cool back in the night. It was a great era, right? It really was. And obviously they did a great job of making sure that era looked like the 90s, right? So the clothing that she obviously used was right on. And it's great that it's coming back, because, and I think a lot of this stuff, help promote the 90s and some of the looks and some of the apparel and record players and everything else that was hot back then. But I think it can stand on its own as well, which is another reason why it was the timing was right for Coed Naked.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a book. You actually wrote a book called The Coed Naked Truth.
I did, yes. Actually, I have it right here. It's I wrote this. The reason I wrote the book was because so many people know about Coed Naked, or knew about Coed Naked, and so many people would come up to me, and after they found out that I owned the trademark, and would tell me how it started. They'd come up and say, "Hey, yeah, that's right. You were a UNH student," which they got right, and you bought it from. Or you started it in college and you went around the dorms, and that's not right. It wasn't quite there. And then, someone else would say, "Hey, you and a professor started the company." I was like, "Oh, well, no, that's not quite right either." So anyway, I wrote the book, The Coed Naked Truth, to reveal to people how it started. But the story itself was kind of, maybe it's just fascinating to me, but I think it's an interesting story because of the success that we had, and then the challenges that we had, right? So for every success we had for the first 5 years, we probably had 3 times the challenges after that. Making sure that we could sustain the business model and figure out how to keep going. So really, the book was written to tell the truth about Coed Naked and how it happened, and some of the stories about how young college kids with no money could figure out how to make this thing grow to the level that we did. So there's some really great stories in it about that, but it also is very entrepreneurial for people that are interested in starting their own business, because it talks about the challenges of running a business, and it goes beyond just Coed Naked. It goes to the post Coed Naked years and talks about some of the business, how our business model changed, and some of the challenges over that. And, our business model today, outside of just Coed Naked, is we do a lot of brand business. We work very closely with some of the largest brands in the country, whether it's Reebok or Adidas or New Balance and WWE, TB12, the Tom Brady line. We work with a lot of these great brands, and we really partner with them to try and produce apparel that is worthy of their brand name. And it's been a great business. The model itself has sustained itself for really since we changed that model, which was around 2010. So I wrote the book to talk about, like I said, the Coed Naked Truth, the decline, the challenges, and then ultimately finding this new business model that would sustain us forever. And of course, I finished the book right at the end of 2019 and thinking, I'm going to end on a really positive note, and that we have this great momentum going with the company and a sustainable model and so forth. And then, of course, in early 2000, COVID hit, right? So there's just another challenge that makes that we weren't expecting. But as a business owner, you have to react to, and you have to figure out how to survive. And so I canceled publishing the book and got through COVID and added that section as well, just because I think it was important. So, it was fun writing. It was fun to reminisce about Coed Naked. And it's great that the book kind of was published. The other nice thing about delaying the publication of the book is it allowed us to actually get to that point where we were going to relaunch Coed Naked. So it kind of came full circle. So it started with Coed Naked and it ends with Coed Naked.
That is so cool. And you know what? Let's show a photo of some of your current selections here at coednaked.com. These look like your best sellers. Ooh, you've got pickleball. That's very current day. Is that a popular one?
I love pickleball.
Yeah, that's our most popular seller right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So what we did is, when we did the relaunch, we went back to the original. So if you see here on the screen, that Coed Naked lacrosse one was the original design. That Coed Naked skiing was an original Coed Naked skiing. But pickleball and cornhole really didn't exist back in those days. So what we did when we developed them for the relaunch was to try and make them look like the original design. So even though they weren't back there, those two shirts weren't back in the 90s, they at least have the 90s vibe to it.
Yeah,
absolutely. And there is nothing like a 90s vibe. I mean, like we talked about, that was a good era.
It was good music, good TV, everything was good.
Everything. I mean, another thing about Yellowjackets, Mark, is the music. Like the 90s hits, the soundtrack, like there are some bangers there. Like it is quintessential 90s tunes. Like another awesome thing about Yellowjackets.
Oh, that's very good.
For when you start watching it very soon.
Yes, next week.
Yes.
90s nostalgia is amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
So good.
It really is. Totally agree.
Absolutely. Well, we've got one more clip to play from Marie, so let's watch that, and then we'll wrap it up.
I mean, at the end of that pilot, there was a lot of talk about the makeup for Misty, for instance. They wanted to have cracked lips, and her glasses are broken, and just to show what they've been through. And it really. I mean, that the aging on that Coed Naked t-shirt is amazing. It looks so real, and it really speaks of their struggles out there, I think, too.
Yeah, it
does. You guys have been camping. You know what it's like. You spend one day out there and your socks are filthy.
That's some good context. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if you get into a plane crash on an island, I assume it's going to look like that as well. So,
yeah, they're out there for 19 months. So I imagine by the time the Coed Naked shirt makes it out of the wilderness, that it's going to be like tattered and, but hey, it went through 19 months in the wilderness. So
that's right.
She's a survivor.
She deserves a new one.
Yes, absolutely. You know what? We should maybe send the actor Liv Hewson one of the soccer shirts for her own wardrobe. Maybe, I don't know.
I think we can do that.
We
can absolutely do that.
All right.
I love the fact that they put the shirt on Van too. Like her character, like she just seems like a person that would wear a Coed Naked t-shirt.
Yeah. She exudes that personality. That's awesome.
Yeah, she's got all the one-liners. Like she nails all the one-liners. So yeah, her personality like really fits the shirt. Emily, you are spot on.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
that's what it is. It's meant to be fun and entertaining, and if she can fit that mold, then they obviously put it on the right person for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, we really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us about your brand, Coed Naked, and how it appeared on Yellowjackets. For anybody who loves Coed Naked as much as we do, it is such an iconic 90s brand making a comeback, and you can buy your own Coed Naked at coednaked.com, along with the Coed Naked Truth, which is also available on Amazon. So do not sleep on the Coed Naked stuff, you guys.
That's great. I appreciate that.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us. We're going to just put you backstage and wrap up. If you want to hang out for a minute, we can chat after. If not, we'll touch base by email. So,
well, it was great meeting you both via Zoom. It was great to be on the podcast. And like I said, I will be tuning in very shortly, and I'll fill you in on my experience for sure.
Please do. And if there's any burning topics you'd like to come back and discuss, you are always welcome to come back and chat with us anytime, Mark.
Love it. You guys have been great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well,
hi, Phoenix.
Oh, Phoenix is watching. Hey, Phoenix. Thanks to everybody who's been watching on the live stream today. Well, Emily, that was a lot of fun. Mark was a great guest, and to get some history behind one of the iconic 90s brands in Yellowjackets is just fantastic.
Yeah. And like I just said, the fact that they put the t-shirt on Van just made the fact that the t-shirt was in the show so much better, because her personality, she really is somebody that you would see wearing that shirt. Jackie would never wear a Coed Naked shirt. Let's be real.
My God, never. She would never wear one. Yeah, Van, they totally nailed it with the character, the shirt. I mean, the wardrobe altogether, the costume design really matching up the looks to each of the characters in the 90s timeline and the contemporary. Marie nailed it. And we will be dropping more clips of our interview with Marie, so everybody can stay tuned for that. But to all of our Hive babes, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for watching.
Yes, thank you. And I hope you enjoyed that as
Absolutely.
much as we did.
Yes. And we will be back soon.
Yes, we will. Until we spill again.
Bye, everybody.